So you want to talk about the B team. Alright, let's talk about them. So the B team, what is the B team? The B team is a team of Bs, or units that I don't think are necessarily as good as other units that are commonly run. No, this doesn't mean these are bad units, this just generally means that they're going to be not as effective, so I also wanted to try out different builds, or just try using them in general. So who of these units did I decide to deploy? Alright, so to begin, let's start with Clan. So Clan, I decided to make a speedy Ike tank. Now on his actual weapon, he's quite fast, and he will double a lot of enemies. So if he goes for this, he can one round. Now the idea behind Clan Hero is that when he's at full health, he has Brave Assist, so it's bonus damage. He also can one round, he's also an Ike tank. So of the builds, I would say this was one of the better ones. It did end up working out long term. He doesn't have the highest strength, but Ike helps offset it. With Axe Power and Noatan +4, he's able to deal pretty high damage. The build cost is reasonable. You know, Axe Power 3, Speed +4 isn't the most expensive, and he has pretty good speed and good enough build to wield this so it doesn't slow him down. Now he can situationally use Armor Slayer to penetrate armor. He could also use Hammer. His dex is reasonably okay, but you could switch him to Hammer so he leverages Axe Power. And he has Hand Axe to 1 to 2 range. Now this definitely isn't one of the best Ike tanks I've ever run. I would still say this is about a B tier Ike tank. There are better options. I think Marin Ike tank, Tamara Ike tank, Kagetsu Axe Power Ike tank. So those builds, Marin is on Gentility Plus for Bravery Plus, and she throws daggers with crits. That's really consistent. She can't get broken by almost anything. The Tamara build is on Javelin with Lance Power. That's really consistent. And then the Axe Power build on Kagetsu. Those are all better Ike tanks, for sure. This is a decent option. Maybe high or low A tier, high, like A- or B+, somewhere around there. It's serviceable, it's decent, it's also a hero. So this is getting the official B tier in the trees. So if they're in the trees, they get a seal of approval. Alright, the next build. Alfred. So one thing I noticed on Alfred is that he doesn't have really that good of strength. He has good growths, but he has kind of bad stats. Now on Wolf Knight, he gets good speed, and then you can kind of leverage his strength growth to some degree, give him Lance Power. You get him Lance Power 2 to 3 early, and then you can increase it as you go later on, get him Speed +5. He's fast enough to double most things. He's also a Bonded Shield user, so Lucina gives him speed increase. He can also switch to Silver Dagger for Dual Assist Plus for getting poison stacks on enemies, which is kind of neat. So he has some utility. This I would say is like B tier. It's definitely not as good as other physical carries, but it's respectable. It's like B+, maybe low A tier if you're being generous. All right, the Citrine build. So a lot of people like Citrine, which is fine. She's a decent unit. Citrine on Sage, I think, is her best use case. Some people like DLC and get her using like Reprisal Plus builds. That's fine, that can one-shot. Generally speaking, I think her best role is kind of like a damage support where she uses Thoron, maybe Momentum, maybe Debuff, like Draconic Hex, maybe Canter, maybe Quality Time, whatever passive you want on her, whatever like configuration you want. But I think her best use case is Thoron Sage. It takes a lot to get her to double. It takes her everything to get her to double. And that her damage is good enough to one-round most things, if not all things, when she can double on Love and Sword. But ultimately, I think it's too much effort and it's not worth it. Now, I did have, like, over time, remove her engraving from Love and Sword and used it on Alchrist's bow just to try out a Brave bow, just to reduce its weight to get him doubling more consistently. But she's fine without it. She still has enough hits. Swords are quite accurate. She one-rounds things consistently. She doesn't need it. But she's on Lyn. You get +5 speed from Lyn, +5 speed passive, build +4 to offset the Levin Sword, and then leverage her magic stat to deal damage. So I would say this build is also B tier, so she goes right into the trees. Now compared to other Mage Knights, like a Pandreo Mage Knight can do this, but just with less resources, and he doesn't need Lyn, so it's not as good as like Anna, Pandreo, or even Ivy on Mage Knight. Speaking of Ivy on Mage Knight, just for the hell of it, I wanted to see what it takes to get Ivy to double in 1 round consistently, and all it takes really is speed +5 and Byleth. Byleth gives you +3 speed, speed +5 passive, as well as her build. If you actually look at her build, or look at her speed, she's faster than Citrine on Bond level 20 Len. So let that sink in. Like, this is the difference between these two units. Like, statistically, she's just superior. And the magic attack is very similar. She also has -1 damage on this engraving, so the magic attack is very similar. They're like the same level too at this point. So this build, so this is kind of like using Ivy in what some consider to be a suboptimal use case. This actually was good. She 1 rounds, she can kind of off tank a little bit, not like too much. Like, she can take a hit really, but she can't like take like 2 to 3 like she can on Wyvern in some cases. So Wyvern is slower, but it has more bulk, and this just 1 rounds pretty consistently with, you know, minimal SP. She has 1 passive, like, and she's 1 rounding pretty much most things. And Citrine is not much stronger than her at the same level. You do get magic +3 in Byleth though, so there's some nuance to the differences. So that being said, I would say this build is like B tier as well. All right, so this was
here goes
a Halberdier build I wanted to try out, a Lance Power Halberdier. Now it can double some things without Pincer, but with Pincer, it can always double. So right now I'm not doubling, so I need Pincer. This build is weird. This build I don't recommend at all. You're better off running like a Tamara Sandstorm on Sigurd, because Tamara with speed +5 on Sigurd is very fast. She can leverage all of Sigurd's weapons. She just does everything this build does, but better. But I just wanted to try this out. Ultimately, this build I'm gonna put way down here by this mage over here. This is like D tier. It's just not very good. It's okay. It can sometimes deal a little bit of damage, but it's basically just way worse than the clan build. So definitely not worth it, don't recommend it. Alright, other builds. Diamant. So this is like a low investment Diamant. I mostly just used him for longbow chip damage and the occasional crit. He was originally going for crits on this, but his might wasn't high enough to one-shot. So I ended up just having him just be a longbow chip damage dude, and I'll probably put debuff on him soon. And he leverages his fair fight passive to try to allow the foes to counterattack so that he can get hit plus. But yeah, longbow probably just needs an accuracy engraving and a debuff, and he'll be okay. I don't see him popping off. He needs too much speed fixing to double consistently, and on base game I just don't think he's very good. So I'll put him in like C tier here. So this is D tier, this is C tier. These are the B tiers up here. I don't think any of these builds are A tier. The Alchrist build. Now, this build, like outside of shooting these flyers, does 1 round consistently on Brave Bow. So I basically figured out a way to make Brave Bow super consistent on him. He has 9 build right now. Brave Bow weighs 11. With Sigurd engraving, it weighs -1, gets +1 damage. You run speed +5 and Speed Taker, which costs 4k SP. And then he gets Erica Bond 17 long term, but right now he's at 16 for extra bonus damage. So basically when he attacks something with Brave Bow, Lunar Brace gives him guaranteed damage, and the higher the defense, the more damage you get from it. So if things have low defense, he just deals more damage with his basic might, but if he is hitting high defense, he deals more damage with Lunar Brace. So no matter what he's attacking, he's going to 1-round it, as long as a single Luna triggers, and at 36 dex, you're looking at like an 80 to 90% chance to see a single Luna when attacking 4 times. So he pretty much guaranteed 1 rounds on this Brave Bow. It does require Erica, but it does still player phase 1 round. He can tank a hit on enemy phase, and he does have decent avoid. When he gets Speed Taker going, his avoid gets quite high. He gets to like 110 avoid, roughly speaking. Maybe closer to like 107. Yeah, it'd be 107 once he gets his speed taking. He also has other weapons I was just testing out just for fun. This Steel Bow, he can go for crits. He gets pretty high crit rate on it. He gets like 70 to 80 crit, generally speaking, which is pretty consistent. But obviously he's going to be doubling instead of quadding, so it's not the best. The Longbow, he can go for long range crits. Look at his accuracy too on this. Now Erica gives a lot of accuracy, but he's basically guaranteed to hit. And he also has decent crit rate. And if he procs a crit and a Luna at the same time, it will kill. So the Longbow build could use Corrin. It will lose might, but The other thing that's nice about this is Lunar Brace gives you guaranteed damage regardless of enemy's defense, and then when you engage, you get bravery damage as well, up to +5, so you get +5. So on the Brave Bow, if you just are engaged, you get 20 damage just from bravery, and then roughly 20 to 40 damage just from Lunar Brace, and between the two of those, that one round's pretty much anything in the game regardless of its stats. So Brave builds are pretty consistent. I would say this is an A tier build, but because it's only player phase, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Alright, Dancer, he's a dancer, let's get him out of here. I'll just go over here. I'll just go over here. Alright, who else? Lyndon, I just started using him, I didn't really commit to him or run a build. Gold Mary, I'm just using her as a, you know, a Brave Assist bot. That's all she does. She throws spears. She can go for a Rider's Bane if it presents itself, and she Brave Assists. This is definitely at least an A tier build as a damage utility. And then Hort, this is just a Cantor Hort, there's nothing new here. So of the new builds, pretty much all of them are B tier, including the Ivy. Like literally all of these are like B tier builds. They're just not as effective as other units running the same resources. But that being said, you can beat the game with these. It's definitely viable. There's nothing holding you back. Like this, you know, a build that always one rounds, a build that can enemy phase, a build that can one round, a build that can one round. Like that's still viable. Got damage assist. You have bonded, 100% bonded on these two hard carries, as well as he can one round himself, so that's pretty decent. And he also has the dual assist plus, which is nice. So we have 2 dual assist plus units, a Thoron debuff, and I was going to make him a Thoron debuff and then him a longbow debuff, so that we'd have 3 debuffs. We'd have a bunch of units that can one round, and the debuffs also help units hit speed thresholds to one round fast enemies, so having 2 to 3 range or 1 to 3 range debuffs is massive in this game. Thoron debuff is probably one of the best support builds because you get a staff bot who can also, you know, if 2 of them attack a thing, get a kill, but also debuff things to set up kills on bosses easily. So overall, if I had to rate this team, I would give it a B tier. It's certainly not as good as my normal teams, and there's elements of the team. Like if I ran Anna instead of Citrine on this, she would just be making me money, and the performance would be very similar. And if Ivy was using Lyn, she would be able to tank, so she'd be able to like kill a thing and then tank like 2 things pretty consistently, which is very nice. So, and that same thing with Ike tank. There's better Ike tanks, there's better Erica units, there's better Lucina units. Leaf is not a contested resource. There's definitely better Micaiah units. And then for Corrin units, Hortensia probably shouldn't be on Corrin, it should probably be someone else. Like honestly, Citrine probably is one of the better Corrin units. Just like give her Corrin, give her like momentum and canter early, so that's like 2k SP for her entire build, and then she can just, you know, use momentum damage, hit a dude, get out of there while debuffing, and then quality timing. That's probably her best use case, and I would say that's like an A tier build. But yeah, that's it for this one. I might beat the game with this team, I don't know, I'm probably done with this team. Like I can easily say I could beat the game with this team. Like I have 2 hard carries I can bonded shield, like just that can beat the game. So from here, for closing thoughts, I guess I would say this was kind of fun team to build. The Alacrus build was fun, just reminded me of like early Tamara builds I used to run using probability math. Going for crits and Brave is pretty crazy. Usually, like just the Brave is enough though. Like if you go for crits and Brave, like if you put a crit engraving on Brave Bow, like Erica engraving, you do run into issues of enemies counterattacking and getting crits on you. So it can be an issue. Erica's the only crit engraving that doesn't reduce damage for non-DLC. So that being said, it's a pretty fun build. But overall, it was fun to use this team, just kind of see how it started out. Some of the mid-game chapters, the team like benchmarks weren't met for like speed thresholds for one rounding or damage thresholds. There were some issues for certain units. I think of these units, Clan had like an okay start after he got switched over. Citrine, even on Lyn, was slow for a while, and it took a while to get her to doubling. Ivy was doubling more consistently than her, like without Lyn, which was kind of funny. Alfred was okay. You throw Sigurd on him early game, he did okay. He would like one-shot things off of momentum damage. He wouldn't double consistently. He's very slow early on. I didn't want to test him on Avenir just because it's just so slow. I couldn't see it working. Even with like something like Lyn, it's just insanely slow. So I put him on Wolf Knight to try to speed fix him. Oh yeah, then the Alir build. This was decent early, but it kind of fell off. I could get speed +5, but even so, the speed is like Alir's speed right now is not that good. And then Diamant was always just kind of whatever. He's only level 23 right now, so he could be leveled up a few more times. Maybe he'd be like 26 speed if he leveled up to like 30, but he's kind of like a weird unit. He doesn't really have high strength, and he doesn't really have high speed. He kind of has just like average stats. And in a game like this, if you excel in something, the other thing can be fixed, but if you excel in nothing, you need a lot fixed. So he needs like damage and speed fixed in order to kill, and he can't really go for a crit build, so he's kind of just a weird unit. But yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Feel free to drop a comment, let me know what you think about this team or any other test builds you've been running, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!